Good evening and welcome to Montgomery County's United in Service and Support Community webinar that will focus on federal worker rights and legal updates. Thank you for joining us. I'm your moderator, Jordan Lindsay. This is one of many webinars that is a part of a series of informational sessions with elected leaders who are united in their efforts to support our residents during these challenging times. Tonight's host is Council Vice President Will Jawando, who is joined by Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown. We will hear from them in just a few moments. We also have questions that have come in through our website, and we'll be asking residents to share questions using the Q&A function. Some of these questions will be answered tonight, and others will be used to shape our next webinar focused on the resources that residents need most. The Q&A feature on Zoom can be located at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar. For the panelists, we kindly ask that you mute yourself when it is not your turn to provide remarks. We also have simultaneous interpretation services available from English to Spanish for those who may need it. Participants here on Zoom can hear Spanish interpretation by selecting the interpretation button at the bottom of their Zoom screens. This will be the globe-shaped button located in the toolbar. Then select interpretation in Spanish. Now I'll go ahead and toss it to my colleague, Marcela Rodriguez, to translate how to access the Spanish channel. Marcela, to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Buenas noches a todos y muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Durante la sesión informativa contaremos con servicios de interpretación simultánea del inglés al español. Para quienes lo necesiten, los participantes en Zoom deben seleccionar el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de sus pantallas. Este será el botón en forma de globo ubicado en la barra de herramientas y posteriormente seleccionar la opción de interpretación en español. Muchísimas gracias. Jordan, back to you.
Thank you, Marcela. Now I'll toss it to Montgomery County Council Vice President Will Jawando for remarks. Council Vice President, to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Marcela. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our third United in Service and Support webinar. I want to thank Council President Kate Stewart, who's here with us tonight, for initiating this series. This is our third one, and there will be several more on topics impacting our federal workforce and the broader community, contractors, and everyone who's been impacted by this. Also want to recognize Councilmember Sidney Katz, who is here, and Councilmember Lorianne Sales, who is off screen but here as well. Tonight, we have a special speaker who I'll introduce momentarily, Attorney General Brown. Tonight, we're going to focus, as was mentioned, on federal worker rights and legal updates, a critical topic affecting so many in our community. As a civil rights attorney myself, I firmly believe in the rule of law, despite what we're seeing happen right now. It's a cornerstone of our democracy, our Constitution, our systems of checks and balances, the separation of powers. It's not just political theory, it's literally what protects us every day. And it's at risk right now. And thank goodness we have people like the Attorney General here helping to fight to keep that system in place. In so many ways, our federal workers and contractors and their families are the heartbeat of our region. Every morning, you show up to make sure our food is safe, our air is clean, our communities are protected, and that our democracy functions. What we are witnessing now is nothing short of an unprecedented attack on our democracy. Earlier this morning, very early this morning at 7 a.m., I was at a rally in Tacoma Park Middle School with the National Education Association President, Becky Pringle, to speak out against the Trump-Musk attacks on public education. Just breaking news tonight, my understanding is that the president plans on signing an executive order tomorrow, totally demolishing and taking apart and decommissioning the Department of Education. As a former U.S. Department of Education employee and a father of 4 current MCPS students, I know firsthand that the sacrifices that our educators are making every single day. They're staying late, they're meeting impossible deadlines, and they're doing it so that our kids can have an opportunity to succeed. And so that's why these cuts, among many others, are so devastating. Behind every termination notice, there's a kitchen table conversation, a mortgage or rent payment, a parent explaining to their child why vacation plans are canceled, or a family wondering if they need to leave the community they love. These aren't just numbers. And again, we have more than 70,000 federal employees and many more contractors. These are neighbors, friends, and family members. So we're here to fight for you. That's what these series are about. We recognize your worth. We recognize your brilliance. You are not disposable. You are indispensable, rather. And so we're really excited. Last thing I'll say before turning it over to Attorney General Brown is I was really proud yesterday to introduce Expedited Bill 1025 to create a hiring preference for displaced federal workers who qualify for jobs that we have here in Montgomery County. So if we're hoping to expedite that bill and get it passed within the next month or so. We'll have a public hearing on April 1st. It's just one of the many, many ways we're trying to make sure our residents, we address this crisis. So with that, I want to thank our special guest this evening, Attorney General Brown, who has been working very, very hard to make sure he upholds the rights and protects the rights of all Marylanders. He's also the first African American to hold the position of Attorney General in our state's history, and I'm proud to say that he's leading a coalition of attorneys generals across the country who are fighting back against the Trump administration's mass firings. And I can't thank him enough for being here tonight. I know he's pretty busy. So with that, I will turn to Attorney General Anthony Brown.
Well, thank you very much, Will, and President Stewart, Vice President Juando, Council members Katz and Sales. It's a pleasure to join you this evening, and I want to thank you, perhaps on behalf of our shared constituents, for hosting these seminars, these webinars, and to provide information, resources, and also for the leadership that you're providing throughout Montgomery County on behalf of not only federal workers and their families, but all residents of Montgomery County, and particularly during what is a very difficult time in our history. As your Attorney General, I made a promise. And I promised that I would take action against the federal government only when it impacts the real issues that Marylanders care about. And those are the issues that we talk about at the kitchen table. And today I'm here to tell you that with the assembled federal accountability, the team that I put together, 6 professionals, and the 1,000 other professionals in the Office of the Attorney General, we're keeping our promise. And whether it's protecting our rights, fighting for fair treatment of federal workers, or ensuring that federal policies reflect the values of our community, we are taking a stand. Before I sort of, at a very high level, touch on some of the actions that we're involved in, let me just step back for a minute and share with you a little bit of who we're working with. So as your Attorney General, I'm working with a multi-state coalition of 23 attorneys general in other states in the District of Columbia. It's not uncommon for attorneys general to work together. We do it on opioid enforcement work. We do it on, years ago, tobacco enforcement. We do it in so many other areas, and often we do it in a bipartisan way. In this case, in terms of holding the federal government accountable, to date, it is a coalition of Democratic attorneys general. We share information and knowledge. We pool our resources. We make decisions about what cases we think are ripe and ready for states to take action in or join. And we make decisions about who will lead those actions. And I'm proud of the team that we've assembled. And I thank the governor and the General Assembly for providing the resources to assemble this team to do this important work on behalf of Marylanders. So in less than 24 hours after the January 20th inauguration, we saw that the fundamental promise of America, and that is that if you are born here, you are a citizen, a promise that's not just tradition, it's the Constitution. It was under attack, birthright citizenship. When the Trump administration in its first 12 hours issued an executive order challenging this right, we took action. Maryland joined a lawsuit because we know that attacking birthright citizenship is an attack on families, communities, and our core values. And as the 4th most diverse state in the nation, with many families who reside in Maryland, some arrived yesterday, and some may have arrived a century ago. But we know that it is the diversity that we are that makes us strong. So when that is under attack, we take action. And we joined with all the attorneys general in bringing action against this executive order. We expect this to be in front of the Supreme Court. Maryland is leading another important action, and that is responding to the Trump administration's layoff of thousands of hardworking federal government employees, probationary employees, 23 to 24,000, many of whom live in Maryland, who lost their jobs through mass firing and an unfair reduction in force order. So we led the fight along with the District of Columbia and Minnesota. We challenged these illegal actions in federal court in Baltimore. We received a temporary restraining order, which is good for 14 days. We'll extend it another 14 days. And not only did the Trump administration, were they ordered to discontinue the layoffs, but to reinstate those probationary employees who were laid off. And this is about protecting the livelihoods of Maryland families who work hard. They serve Maryland and America, and they deserve fair treatment. In the first week of the Trump administration, the president attempted to suspend federal funding that supports so many critical services from education to public health. And this memo that came out from OMB, Office of Management and Budget, attempted to freeze funding and put those services at risk. So we joined this lawsuit to protect Marylanders and Maryland and our access to essential resources. We received a preliminary injunction in that case as well. We filed 2 lawsuits against DOGE, and you know how oxymoronic that is. The Department of Government Efficiency, which is anything but efficient. Few of us take issue with the value of finding efficiencies in government. But we understand that that should be done in a deliberate way, a thoughtful way, and to be judicious in the decisions that you make, where in contrast, the Department of Government Efficiency is taking a sledgehammer and a chainsaw to do this work and harming many, many. So we filed a lawsuit. The first lawsuit challenged Elon Musk and his team from going into the central payment system of the U.S. Treasury. Many of you know that it's a huge system. About $7 trillion flow through that system every year. It's everything from veterans benefits, Social Security benefits, tax returns, and almost anything that has a dollar sign on it that is issued by the federal government. Marylanders receive about $51 billion a year through that system. Maryland as a state, about $11 billion. So it was important for us to protect that, and not just for the financial reasons, but it's a system that contains a vast volume of our personal identifying information. So we've gone to court. We've received some injunctions. We're making progress there. The Trump administration also sought to cut NIH funding for life-saving research, much of that being done in Maryland. Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, College Park, University of Baltimore. We are a robust biomedical community in Maryland. So that funding, cuts to that funding, freezing to that funding would hurt jobs, it would hurt research, it would hurt communities. And we joined with our colleagues to file an action so to ensure that America, and certainly from our perspective, Maryland, continues to be a leader in medical innovation, and we're not going to allow reckless decisions to undermine that progress. The administration also moved, and Vice President Duando spoke about the attacks of the Department of Justice. The administration moved to terminate a $600 million program, grants, that are used to address teacher shortages. We know that in Maryland, there are several thousand teacher shortages, certified teachers in our classrooms. So we joined the multi-state coalition and challenged this decision as well, securing a temporary restraining order. And the administration's reduction in force order at the Department of Education appears to be the first step toward dismantling the agency altogether. And Councilmember Duando talked about what he's hearing about the total, elimination of the department. So we are on watch. We filed a suit to address that as well. And the last case that I want to address that the Office of the Attorney General, we're involved in, Maryland is involved in, is that case that supports gender affirming care. You know, every Marylander deserves access to the health care they need, regardless of gender identity. So when the Trump administration issued an executive order banning gender affirming care for individuals under 19, we stood up. Lambda and families with transgender children filed an action, and we led an amicus brief in this case because this is about dignity, equality, and protecting vulnerable youth. A preliminary injunction has been granted in that case. So let me close before we open up for questions, and certainly like to hear comments as well. I just want to assure you that we are standing up for Maryland and fighting for Marylanders. We cannot be everything for everybody. I mentioned a number of cases that we're involved in. There are over 100 cases filed against the Trump administration from labor unions and individuals, from civil society organizations, ACLU, Democracy Forward, etc. There are going to be times when the state has standing and can demonstrate harm to the state, and there will be other times where we may not be able to meet that threshold standard, and we will stand by and stand with others who do that, because this is about workers, it's families, students, patients, and communities across our state. So Will, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing in the Office of the Attorney General on behalf of Marylanders, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Attorney General Brown. We're going to get into questions. I see if you have questions, Jordan will tell you how to make sure we get those in. There are some pre-submitted. I did want to also acknowledge Angela Greer, who's from Councilmember Friesen's office, who is here representing that office as well. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Jordan, to get the questions going.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jawando. Just a friendly reminder to all that we received a lot of questions from residents on similar issues. So I'll be reading from some submitted questions that reflect a broad part of the community. Please also note that all questions that have been submitted will be captured and used to help us plan upcoming webinars. Now we'll move on to the questions and comments from residents. Up first is a question about federal worker rights regarding a possible collective defense against the recent mass layoffs. This person is saying, as a federal employee with presumptive protections of their job, it appears that the Trump administration is determined to fire tens of thousands without due process. This person is asking how they can defend themselves collectively rather than hiring expensive lawyers individually. They also asked about the unions.
Well, and thanks for including the unions in that question, because I know a large percentage of federal government workers are part of a union, whether it's AFGE or AFSCME or NTEU, the whole alphabet listing of unions. And we partner with them on some of the actions that we're bringing, and we defer to them on others. There are some actions where the state doesn't have standing to bring an action where a union might, and there are times when a union doesn't have standing and the actual federal employee needs to bring that action. In fact, NTEU brought an action. I don't know if it was the NTEU. One of the labor unions brought an action against the Schedule F, where the administration is attempting to put everyone almost in an at-will position and strip this category of federal employees of all protections. And in one case, the union was told it does not have standing, and members have to bring those through the Merit System Protection Board or the other administrative bodies where federal government workers can, bring grievances and about any personnel action, including termination. So it depends, right? So I mentioned that we brought an action against the unlawful reduction in force, 24,000 employees. Well, why was the state able to bring that case, but it can't bring other states? Because the state was able to articulate a harm to the state itself. And by the state, I mean the state government. We're able to articulate that without the notices that the administration is required to provide states, we couldn't respond. We couldn't reach out to federal workers and connect them to jobs, to connect them to resources, to do the verification applications in a timely manner for unemployment insurance benefits. So we were able to demonstrate a harm. That's what gave us what we call standing, so we could go to court and stay in court. There will be cases where we don't have standing, and employees or the unions will have to bring those cases. And there will be times when, unfortunately, you may be best served by retaining an attorney. I can tell you that there are many attorneys and many law firms who are willing to do this work on a significantly reduced or pro bono basis. If you go to my website and just Google in Maryland Attorney General, we list resources. We don't make referrals and recommendations, but we list resources for legal aid services that can work with you on any case that you think you have to bring against the federal government. But unfortunately, often it does require the assistance of an attorney because the laws can be quite complicated.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Brown. We have another question. This person says, what can be done if the administration continues to break or ignore the law? This person says that they've already shown they aren't willing to follow the law. So what's the difference it will make when a court orders them to stop doing something? This person also says the cases are going to end up in the Supreme Court. They said the court has already shown that they are willing to grant the administration virtually unlimited power.
So, the Supreme, many of these issues will go to the Supreme Court. There's no doubt about it. And that's why, while we are pleased to see temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions, and perhaps even we'll get a judgment in favor of the states, in favor of workers, these cases will be appealed. They're already being appealed right now. They're going to go to the Fourth Circuit in Maryland. If we're in Maryland, they're going to go to the Ninth Circuit in California. And eventually, many of these cases will make it to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court has demonstrated that it will issue opinions that don't make sense. And they give the president authorities that I don't think the founding fathers contemplated. We saw that last summer when they extended, presidential immunity for conduct of a president, and that was a case involving President Trump while he was not president at the time, and that was an alarming opinion. But the Supreme Court has also handed the president defeat. So we're going to appeal to their principles of separation of power, their strict interpretation of the Constitution when it comes to whether Congress has the authority or the executive branch has the authority, and what the appropriations clause means, and the spending clause of the Constitution, and the takings clause. So we're going to appeal to that, and principles of federalism and states' rights. Believe it or not, blue states like Maryland actually invoking principles of states' rights before the Supreme Court. But we'll do that, and I think it's hard to say, but I think we will succeed in some cases, and others we won't. But also part of your question, which certainly should raise some concerns, is what happens if and when the administration does not follow an order of the court. And we just saw that recently when the federal judge, the court in the District of Columbia, ordered the federal government to direct planes that were carrying deportees to El Salvador, and the Department of I won't say the Department of Justice, it was the Department of Justice lawyers, but the administration did not follow that order, and they're making some specious argument around whether the oral order was written or oral. The oral order was very clear in what was required. The written order not as clear, but there is case law, there are opinions, there are DOJ memos that say that it doesn't matter whether it's a written order or an oral order. If it's an order of the court, it has to be followed. It does concern us that the president may choose not to follow orders of the court. It concerns us when the president talks about, as he did in this case, impeaching judges, where allies of the president say the same. So while I believe our Constitution, our democracy is strong, I think it's being tested. I don't think we're yet in a constitutional crisis, but I think we will be in a crisis mode if when orders of the court are not followed. And I'm concerned, as you are, because the president has demonstrated he's willing to go down that path, although he's not yet fully ventured down that path.
Thank you for that information, Attorney General Brown. Up next, we have a question for Council Vice President Jawando. It looks like this person says, can you further elaborate on how expedited Bill 1025, Personnel and Human Resources hiring displaced federal workers, will offer preference for displaced federal workers? This legislation was recently introduced by Council Vice President Jawando to create a hiring preference within the Montgomery County government for federal employees who have recently been displaced and faced a loss of income.
Sure thing. Thank you. And just before I answer that, I just add on, and thankfully, Chief Justice Roberts rebuked the president when he said that judges should be impeached because of giving orders. So hopefully a glimmer of hope that the third branch of government will hold. But I share Attorney General Brown's concerns, as I think many of us do. Yes, this bill, which Council President Stewart and four of my other colleagues co-sponsored, is just trying to layer on, another layer of Swiss cheese of how we can help federal workers here deal with the problems that we have. And it would put them, give them, if they're qualified for the job, they have to meet the qualifications of the job, and they're a Montgomery County resident, and they've been fired as of January 1st by this administration or RIFT, and it can prove a loss of income. As a former federal employee, when you leave, you have to sign an SF-50, and it talks that you've gone, and that would be verified, and they would get the same level of preference, which means as a veteran and a person with disability, which would mean that they would get an interview, assuming they meet the qualifications, before the other folks that are in the queue for the job. They still have to meet the qualifications, and if they are good for the job, they could be hired. It's just a way that we can help get our folks, look, we want these federal employees to stay here. We want them to be able to afford to live here, and if the federal government in this current administration doesn't want them, we certainly could benefit from their expertise. And so it's an unprecedented measure that I never thought I would have to be introducing a bill to do something like this, but we're in an unprecedented time. And with the largest percentage of federal employees in the state, this is something that obviously we're very concerned about. As with others, I just also will mention that WorkSource Montgomery, who was there at the press conference yesterday, is also planning job fairs for all folks who have been displaced. They're trying to connect to the tens of thousands of jobs that are open in Montgomery County in the private sector and elsewhere here. But this is a piece that I think we can do in the on the county government side to just help be another thing to help our residents. So that'll have a public hearing on April 1st, and really appreciate the question.
Great, thank you.
I can jump in there and to put a pitch in for state government and federal government employees. Should know that Governor Moore just recently announced, in partnership with Work for America, a program that they're calling the Moore administration Civic Match, and looking to match federal government workers who either are current and looking to leave or may lose or have not already lost their job, to look for opportunities in state government. We have received an enormous uptick in applications from attorneys and non-attorney legal professionals who are either current or former federal government employees, and we certainly welcome those applications as well. Again, go to Maryland Attorney General, our website, and you'll see our tab for careers.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. Up next, a question, it looks like, for Attorney General Brown. This person says that you recently led a coalition of 20 attorneys general filing a lawsuit against multiple federal agencies for the illegal mass firings of federal probationary employees, forcing Maryland and other states to deal with devastating economic fallout. Can we have an update on that?
So, yeah, and as I mentioned, that's in Baltimore, federal judge in Baltimore, Judge Berdar. He's a no-nonsense judge. He's big on process, and one of the major allegations in our case is that the administration didn't follow the right process, right? So some of you may be familiar with, or you've heard of, the Administrative Procedure Act and the Code of Federal Regulations and the United States Code, which is the statutes, and it lays out how personnel management, right? Hiring and firing and promotions and retentions. And when you lay off a certain number of people, the federal government is required to give notice to states, again, so we can respond and assist those workers. And they didn't do that in this case. Instead, what they said was, no, we've actually individually evaluated these 23,000 employees and made a determination that their performance is inadequate, essentially is what they said. And Judge Berdar found that unbelievable. And so, again, he ruled in our favor. As of Monday, the administration was to reinstate those employees. To file a status report with the court saying what efforts have been taken and how many employees have been reinstated, and to ensure that they don't do this going forward until such time that the court can resolve this dispute. We have a temporary restraining order, good for 14 days. A week from today is Wednesday. A week from today, we'll be back in the ceremonial courtroom in Baltimore in front of Judge Berdar seeking a preliminary injunction which would enjoin, stop, prevent the administration from laying off probationary employees unlawfully until this case is resolved. Now, I want to use this, though, to make a larger point. Elections matter, right? And the president has enormous power and authority granted to the presidency in the Constitution, in statute. So it's not that the states can completely prevent a president or an agency head from a reduction in force and termination of employees. But what we can force them to do is to do it the right way. When you do that, like certain categories of federal employees get benefits, or preference, I should say, veterans preference. There's a system of seniority. There has to be an effort to move employees to other positions and things like that. And it's time consuming. A RIF of this magnitude normally would take probably 18 to 24 months. And they try to do it in that many hours. So, often the president, they have a lot of power. They're going to set out to accomplish things. All presidents do. They've got to do it in a lawful manner, and that's what our case is all about.
Thank you, A.G. Brown. People watching, you can learn more about the Civic Match State of Maryland initiative by Governor Wes Moore that A.G. Brown just referenced. That will be in the chat. You can click that link. Also in the chat, you'll be able to find employment opportunities with the Maryland Office of the Attorney General that can be explored on the OAG webpage. Next is a question from a federal employee that says their career is in serious jeopardy. They are looking to find a position in either the Maryland state or the county government. They'd love advice on how to navigate that employment path.
Well, I can start off. I think we've just been talking about that, and the resources that you just mentioned, Jordan, will be helpful in the Office of the Attorney General and the Civic Match. There's certainly, while our bill isn't passed yet, you can certainly still apply for any open county jobs that are there now. The preference is not in effect until after the bill passes, but we can also, I'll ask that maybe our staff could also put in the county jobs and a link to WorkSource Montgomery, and that'll all be on our resource page, which I think is there as well, that has links to all of those counties' resources. And as was mentioned before, we're really working hard to try to connect folks. It's a difficult time, and I just want you to know we understand the pain that you're going through, and whether you're worried about your income, you're worried about your trying to serve other residents in your job, because these are jobs of public service. I keep reminding people, like, you're doing these jobs because you care about people, and that's a good thing. So please take advantage of these resources, and if there's anything individually you need help with, you can certainly reach out to our offices, in my office specifically, and we'll try to connect you as much as possible.
Great, thank you, Council Vice President. Also, the bill, expedited bill 1025 that Council Vice President Jawando mentioned, Personnel and Human Resources Hiring Displaced Federal Workers, that was recently introduced. You can learn more about that in the chat there. Up next, we have a person who says, asking, do you have a standing to the address of the latest Executive Order 314 that placed all of USAGM Voice of America on administrative leave? This person says, pending a review of required operations. It seems they are planning RIFs of up to 70 to 95% of all employees in that agency within the next week. This person is asking, or is that purely federal?
So yeah, I think the question was trying to, do you have standing for the
Right.
cases? Yeah.
Right. So, so we're evaluating that. That is on our radar. It is, one of the many, many executive orders and actions by this administration. And this, again, is one of the benefits of working with a multi-state coalition. We've got a lot of eyes and ears and resources scanning the rising. So that one is on our radar. We are evaluating it. And the question is asked whether we have standing. That's what we're evaluating first. It's one of the first questions that we have to ask. Do we have standing? Is there, what we call a sovereign interest in it, an interest in the government? Now, obviously the government, right? Maryland, Montgomery County government, our interests are the people, right? The families, the people, the students, the patients. So, but that's not enough for the courts, right? So, so what is that? What is the sovereign? What's the interest, the impact on the state, the government as sort of an institution of the people? So we're evaluating that, whether it's USAID, Department of Education. We know that there's another executive order that went out recently that identified 7, I believe, federal agencies, very small agencies, and instructing them to review their work and any non-statutorily required responsibilities, because often you'll have an agency that will pick up responsibilities and duties over time because it's sort of ancillary or adjacent to their core mission. The administration has asked or directed those 7 agencies to take a look at their work, and if they're not required to do it by statute, to discontinue doing that work. Well, it's not just the work, because if you discontinue the work, and those are the services to the American people, but it's also the jobs, the people that perform that work. So that's on our radar as well, and we're trying to understand and evaluate, I should say, whether we have standing. These are fact-specific inquiries that we have to make. But so the short answer is yes, it's on our radar, and we have not yet determined whether we have standing.
Thank you, Attorney General Brown, for that information. Up next, a person is asking, how can federal workers' retirement be protected? They are trying to do the following changes, changing the retirement calculation from the high 3 to high 5 without locality pay. This person is saying that they're taking away the bridge payment from 57 to 62, which mimics Social Security until you are of the age to get it. Making the health benefits into a voucher system is what this person is saying. So
I'm not able to speak to that, and I don't know if the Vice President wants to speak to that. I would say that, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, federal personnel law can be very sort of Byzantine and complicated. If you're a member of a union, I certainly would sit down with the union. They've got that expertise, the experience in advising federal employees who are thinking about leaving or not on their rights, their privileges, their benefits, and things like that. So I would start with the union.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I know AFG and the other unions are looking into the retirement issue. Obviously, there was also the legality or illegality of these leaving early, these kind of taking the package. There's some people that have been concerned about that, of whether that they had to give up certain rights in that process. So I think the going with the unions on that, even if you're not represented, they do represent a class of other employees. Even if you're not represented, they probably have information. So we can again put the contacts for AFGE and others in the chat, but that would be where I would start as well.
Great, thank you. Up next, this person is asking to elaborate about health insurance if a person loses their federal contract job. They're
looking for health insurance. Well, obviously, I know the Attorney General in his former job was involved with the Health Insurance Exchange, setting that up in the state of Maryland as Lieutenant Governor. But there's certainly that is still open in Maryland. There's also COBRA, but that people can apply for after your job ends if you are RIP, and that should be again part of your benefits package. But again, I would again speak to at your individual agency. If you're immediately fired, I would look into the COBRA. But there is also the exchange in Maryland. We can also, that's on the resource page as well. I don't know if the Attorney General wants to add anything on that.
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay.
Jordan, I would just
Council President,
yeah,
please.
no, I would just say our very first webinar with Senator Van Hollen, we had a representative from our Health and Human Services
right.
Department who went over some of these issues, and we are recording and have the slides and the recording of each of the webinars on the council website. So you can go there, look at those slides, see the recording of the advice from HHS, and then if you still need additional assistance, there was contact information there to connect with our department at HHS or the state or any of our offices.
And there are programs in Montgomery County for folks who don't have insurance, and all that is on the, thank you for bringing that up. Yep.
Thank you, Council President. More information about unemployment insurance for former federal employees can be found in the chat. We have a link there that might also be helpful to people watching. Another person is asking, when is the next decision or hearing in the case before Judge Bredar?
On Wednesday, Judge Bredar is going to hear motions on a preliminary injunction, which is important in a case like this. This way we can sort of return everything to the status quo. We have the status quo right now, which means how things were before the president terminated, mass fired these 23 to 24,000 probationary employees. So next Wednesday will be a hearing to put that status quo order in place for the remainder of this lawsuit. When you have a preliminary injunction, though, it is appealable, and we expect the Department of Justice to appeal it to the Fourth Circuit, where we would make argument down in Richmond. We think that the Fourth Circuit is a good circuit to be in, but again, no telling how a court will rule on the facts and the law that's presented to them in any given case. But the short answer is a week from today, we'll be in Judge Bredar's courtroom on the preliminary injunction hearing on the preliminary injunction motion.
Thank you, A.G. Brown. We have another question regarding Expedited Bill 1025, Personnel and Human Resources hiring displaced federal workers. This person wants to know who qualifies as a displaced federal worker. I know you mentioned this, Council Vice President, but if you can elaborate how this legislation defines the term displaced federal worker, and also under current law, how does the county provide a hiring preference to job applicants, and what would Expedited Bill 1025 add?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. I'll be very clear. So the definition of displaced federal worker is that you have to be a Montgomery County resident. You have to have been a federal employee, a civil servant who has lost their job or was RIFed and can demonstrate income loss. Those are the requirements. And in order, as far as where the preference fits in, we have a listing of preferences. This would be on par with veterans in at the same level. So veterans and federal displaced workers would, if they met the definition, would be given the interview, assuming they meet the qualifications of the job, prior to other folks who have applied for that same job. So it puts you in an earlier place in the line to be interviewed, assuming you meet qualifications, and potentially get the job. That's how our preference system works. And again, but the initial application would be like anyone looking. You'd look on the website, see if you thought that you qualified for the job, and you would apply, and you would indicate that you were a displaced federal worker, and then that would be verified by our Office of Human Resources. But again, the bill has to pass. I want to emphasize that it's not passed yet, but that would be how it would work.
Great. Thank you so much, Council Vice President. Well, that looks like all the time we have for questions this evening. Just a reminder that the next United in Service and Support Community webinar will be hosted by Councilmember Lori Ann Sales on April 2nd, and the topic will be on support for workers transitioning from federal employment to new opportunities. Now I'll toss it back to Council Vice President Jawando for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Also, just want to again thank Attorney General Brown for being here tonight, as well as my council colleagues, Council President, Councilmember Katz, Councilmember Sales, and Ms. Greer from Councilmember Friedson's office. We are all in this together. As you can see from this information and resources from tonight's discussion, that's all going to remain available on the council's website and be a part of this continuing series that we will have. And there'll be other topics as we move forward. Please stay connected with us. Keep asking questions. If you're like me and you think of a question after this, send it in to us, and we will get back to you. As you can see, this is a whole county, state effort to make sure that we're taking care of all of our residents. And we know that working together, we can make sure all our federal workers, their families, continue to thrive here in Montgomery County. And so with that, thank you for coming out tonight. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Council Vice President. And members of the virtual audience, please take a look at your screen where you will see a list of local helpful resources. Thanks again for joining and have a great evening.